Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good night, depending on where you are in this world. I'm Cairo. This is the Mindmeld Live with Shell Protocol. We've got your usual guys, Cairo and Kenny, here today. Plus, we have a guest from WalletConnect here to talk about connecting wallets, presumably. Vanessa, do you want to say hi to everybody? Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me on today. So my name is Vanessa. I'm a developer advocate for WalletConnect. We connect wallets, but we also do a lot of other things too. So yeah, a little bit about what I do as a developer advocate at WalletConnect. Well, we kind of handle a lot of different things. So we basically work on the developer experience from the moment a developer lands on your documentation and what that trajectory looks like. And from there, we go on to a lot of like outreach as well, working on with like different events, community events, hackathons, helping hackers and stuff. And of course, a lot of support, a lot of GitHub support, Discord support, a little bit of everything.
Um, Now, I also consider myself front facing in my role, but I think I mostly am dealing with end users. I wonder what the difference is interacting with developers. Before we get into that, though, I want to give Kenny a chance to say hi to the audience. Kenny.
Hey, what's up, guys? Kenny, CEO and founder of Shell Protocol. I may have missed, I don't know if I missed my intro cue. The video froze, right?
I think I like didn't give you a good one, so
Oh, no, well, the video froze, so it all, I shouldn't have said that. Now I just outed myself as having bad internet. But yeah, I'm super psyched to be here, super psyched to be talking to Vanessa,
I'm
learning about
like
wallet.
outnumbered by blondes on this call today.
Get
It's
used to it.
unusual.
I'm just
Yeah.
kidding. You can't say that anymore.
I can't say that.
No, I can't say that.
Oh, uh, well, anyway. Glad to have you here, Kenny, at this early morning. We did have a question from Yuri. Hi, Yuri. Asks, why so late call? Why so late call? Well, because it's 9 in the morning in Hawaii. So if we did it any earlier, Kenny would be sleepy and probably not want to join. We could do later and wait until you're awake again, and that's something that we might want to explore. Um,
Yeah, I think
just
it
how
depends on
easy.
the guest and what time zone they're in. If
Yeah,
someone's in the East Coast of the United States, maybe later wouldn't work so well. But if they're based in Asia, then later probably would be exactly when they could make it.
that's true. That's true, yeah. Um, Speaking of time zones, Vanessa, you mentioned the Wallet Connect team is mostly in Barcelona. Um, what is that like for like work and culture and everything being on a mostly Spanish team?
I think it's so cool. I'd say the only thing that kind of sucks about it is the working hours. So I start work around 6 a.m., sometimes a little bit earlier, but I think there's like so many more benefits to it. A lot of our team, so they're not just based in Barcelona, they're based really all out of Europe, a lot of Polish engineers. And it's just been
I
kind of
love
fun.
our
Like,
Polish engineers.
yeah, they're great. They're a really good time. So I think the culture is a little bit different. Like we've had some like offsites where like the relationship between most of the devs are just really tight knit, and I didn't really see that too often. Where here in the states, like a lot of the like I guess U.S. state developers, the way they interacted with each other, it could be a European thing, but it could also be a Web3 thing. I'm not really sure. So that's really cool. And actually, in 2 weeks, we'll be moving to Europe for. We're going to be kind of traveling for the next 6 months, but we'll start with Europe and Barcelona. So I'm super excited to get like FaceTime with some of the teammates because, ever since COVID started, I've been remote and I absolutely love it. Like I would never change
Yeah.
it. But working on a smaller team, working on a team where we just ship so fast and like communication is so vital and so much of it happens in Slack. I could definitely see the benefit of like, working closer to them, like in proximity. So I'm pretty excited for that.
Well, I've got a lot of questions I could go with there. Our last guest as well was remote working in Europe as an American, and he seemed pretty psyched about it. So I'm sure you'll have an amazing time. Uh, just for some background, is this your first Web3 job? If so, how's it been going? How did you end up in Web3,
Yeah.
etc.?
All right. So I guess we can kind of start a little bit from the beginning here. So before Web3, before developer advocacy, I was working as a software engineer at Carvana. It was this company here in the States where we sell used cars.
It's like an
And I was
internet
working,
cars, right?
yeah, it's honestly, the experience is pretty next level. I mean,
Uh,
before you would have to go into a dealership and buy a car and it would take hours. And now you can just like scroll through it and like, it just, for our time and age, I feel like it just makes perfect sense.
so you
But
know this is real praise when you have an ex-employee who's hyping the company,
yeah,
That's
I mean, it's cool. It's
authentic.
not perfect, but I think the
Yeah.
experience and what they started was really different than what was going on at the time. But yeah, so I'm working at this really cool tech company. They're doing really great things, but I realized I wanted to be on a kind of smaller team and make, I guess, more impact and somehow. And during this time, I have a friend reaches out to me, and he knew that I was a programmer, and he's like, "Hey, do you know how to code these ERC 721 tokens?" And I'm just reading it and thinking, "What are you talking about?" Like, so I Google this, and then I start, reading about smart contracts and learning about that and Ethereum. And before I was programming, I was working in TradFi. And so in TradFi, it's pretty much like very Warren Buffett, like you don't touch crypto, crypto's a scam. And so back in like 2017, when I'm doing that, my mind's just like, Bitcoin's weird, Ethereum's nothing. But now
Yeah.
coming at it like at a level as a programmer and like being able to read these smart contracts, it like clicked. It was like,
Yeah.
wow, this is like actually real. This isn't just like make believe money.
Oh, we might have
And
lost you.
so that kind of started like the rabbit hole kind of down
Friends watching
to
on replay, I think you'll be fine. And Vanessa, you are back. Okay.
cool.
So it clicked.
All right, yeah. Um, so yeah, I start reading about smart contracts, learning more about Web3, what this is, and then in one of my Carvana like Slack channels, we had this Ethereum channel, and this guy had posted, "Hey, I'm leaving the company. I'm going to go work in Web3. Here's my info if you want to like stay in contact." So I hit him up and was just like super, "Hey, I'm Vanessa and I'm interested in Web3. This is still like super early for me." And he just like, dude, he like indoctrinated me into crypto. He gave me all these resources and gave me a lot of like videos to watch over monetary policy. And
Uh-huh.
it just like completely changed the game for me. So shout out Pat if you're listening. He was really the one. And so now I'm like super on train. Like this is what I want to
Stay in
do.
touch with him?
Uh, what's up?
Do you stay in touch with Pat?
Oh yeah, for sure. He's one of my homies. He's going to be visiting us in Barcelona.
Nice.
Yeah, gotta keep
And
those
how did you
Web3 friends
settle
close.
with WalletConnect? Did you just sort of started playing broadly, or was there something specific?
Yeah, so once I got the bug for Web3, I started kind of looking at what type of role I'd be interested in.
Hmm.
And I really enjoy like just personally, I like teaching people. I like getting them excited about something I find really cool and I want to share like the passion about it. And so, being on Twitter, you see a lot of these people pretty active on Twitter and there are these people called developer advocates and it seems like a pretty cool job. And I was fortunate enough to win a scholarship through Blue Dow. And so I went to my first hackathon in real life. It was in New York last year, so the ETH Global event. And that was just like game changer. That's where, you got to be in face with a lot of these companies and just kind of like, vibe check, but learn about the protocol, learn about their culture. Cause I think that culture is
Yeah.
very different, every project in Web3. But then at the second hackathon I went to, again, also went with Blue Dow. During our demoing, I was invited to apply as a developer advocate for WalletConnect. But to give you some context of like that weekend, I basically was like living at the WalletConnect booth. I kept going back because, I'd find errors in the documentation, or I just wasn't able to understand, or I wasn't able to get the repo running. Whatever it was, I just kept going back, and I felt really bad, but I felt like it was just kind of more for me. I wanted to prove to myself that, like I can make this work. Is it like this must be user error? But come to find out, it wasn't user error. But this is kind of the thing that happens with a lot of Web3 projects. I think that's why
Yeah.
developer advocacy is like such a, big role in a lot of these projects. So I consider that my working interview. But after that, I was
You
invited to
think a
apply.
long time to attract talented devs was just to mess up the docs and then, kind of like bait you into engaging with the booth.
I mean, that's probably something you could do, but it was, when you only have 2.5 days of working on a project and you just like need it to work, sometimes
Yeah.
it can be a bit stressful. But it was cool because I honestly had no idea that was kind of happening, or that was even the intent. It was just mostly I really want this to work and I want to be able to do it.
Do
And
you
so
sleep in those 2.5 days? Is there a lot of sleep that happens?
Um, on the first night, I'll get, at least 6 hours of sleep, but on that Saturday to Sunday,
Yeah.
maybe like an hour after you've like submitted your project and you just like don't want to look like a zombie when you're pitching to all the sponsors. So that's like your sleep time. But it also depended like on your role, because a lot of the people that were doing like the decks, for example, like they had a different sleep schedule than the devs. So it
Yeah.
just depended on your job.
Cool. Cool. And that led to the role that you've been in for the past 9 months?
Yeah.
Nice.
So I,
Yeah,
I
go ahead, Kenny.
I got kind of a stupid question. What exactly is a developer advocate, and what do they do, and why are they so important?
Great question. So I'll answer first what a developer advocate does. So a developer advocate is, I like to think we are the voice to your developers about your product. You have the PR kind of communication where it's like very straightforward, and this is, it's content
Yeah.
made for those types of end users. Whereas your developer advocate, they're promoting your APIs, they're promoting your SDKs, they're promoting your product for other developers to use. And the thing is that, I mean, sometimes there's a lot of tools for the same thing. And so
Yeah.
how do you market to developers? And generally you would think, well, I can have a marketing team, like they can do this. But marketers understand like retail end users, right? They don't really understand the way developers think and really what developers want. And so
Developers
you kind of
very
take,
confusing.
yeah, it's like you take a marketer, the marketing strategies, you give them some developing skills and then some teaching skills and then public speaking skills. And then you kind of have a developer advocate. So and it also varies too per team and like what the needs are.
Yeah.
And I mean, to like give you an example, on our team, for a long time, it was just me. And then we recently we had 2 engineers run over to developer advocate. Well, I guess not run over, but they turned over, which is really amazing because now we have, 3x teams and we can cover a lot more ground. And so before it was just kind of like a general where you're just kind of like keeping the fires down, right? And like you're doing a lot of everything. But now that we have more capacity, we're able to really kind of focus and create these verticals to really like custom that experience. Because that's the thing, I think people think that like you hire one dev and like, oh, they can do it all. But they can probably do it all, but if you really want the value of having a developer advocate, like you need to have either already the process down or you need to have like the hands to help execute all these things, because marketing needs you, product needs you, engineering needs you. And for them, everything's like a priority one. So it's very important because we're, like the first person that gets to talk to your developers, and we're bringing that feedback also back to product to make sure that we're building for developers and we're not just building, in a vacuum.
So if I'm a developer, why should I use WalletConnect?
You
Hypothetically,
should,
I'm not a developer.
yeah, yeah. Well, I would ask you, like, do you want your end users to be able to connect to these dApps on mobile devices? And if that's yes, then you should definitely use WalletConnect. But if, and even if you're not, like, even if that's not your full intention, you can. But the thing is that, I think we've seen from desktop users, like the majority of people are on their phones, and these like 1 billion people, I mean, they're not on desktops using extension browser wallets. Like, we don't have 1 billion people doing that, but they are on their phones. They are on apps on their phones. And so I think with that in mind, if that's what we're trying to build for, then Wallet Connect is a perfect solution.
I want to shout out anyone who's watching. Just if you want to ask questions, we're in the Mindmeld chat Discord channel on the Shell Discord. Come on over there and drop your questions if you want us to see them.
So do you all have any developer advocates for
I'm
Shell?
sitting here listening to you, and I'm like, we got to get one of those. Like I'm getting like FOMO on developer advocacy now. I do have some questions about like process and day to day because it seems sort of like I guess as you said, putting out fires basically when you have a dev who already wants to use Wallet Connect and is like having problems and needs someone to be like their sort of like their concierge to fix things with their implementation, which was you, I guess, when you were in that hackathon, versus like someone who is like a more like a sales lead in that they might benefit from using Wallet Connect, but they're not convinced to put in the effort. How much time do you personally spend working with one group versus the other?
So I think it depends. And maybe I should clarify that statement about putting fires out. So
Okay.
when there are no processes, it feels like you're putting out fires left and right because there's no funnel to put these problems, Something that I learned very quickly in DevRel is I log in every morning and it's just like red, 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 red of all these messages that I've been, like at Vanessa. And so when there's no processes, it feels like everything's a fire. But now that we have like the capacity, or now once your DevRel has the capacity to create these processes, it becomes a lot easier to prioritize and put things where they need to be.
Processes
So
meaning like tickets, like an Airtable flow, like what do you mean processes?
yeah, like for example, like getting feedback. So let's say we have in one of our external party channels, someone's giving us feedback about our Web3 modal. And it could be like, hey, oh, Vanessa, here's some feedback about this. And
Yeah.
instead of just kind of like adding me, well, now we have a chart or like a database in Notion that I can just share with everybody on the team. And now if they get feedback, they can easily self-serve. And I think that's kind of what it kind of comes down to is how can we create processes that allow basically everyone on the team to self-serve and, make it super visible. Because when you just have kind of one person that has to do this one update, it's really not, it just doesn't jive well, right? I mean, that's why we create the process. So once we have that down, it just makes it a way more manageable and just, being able to see process, and also then you're able to measure things, because that's also something that is a challenge and something that actually, I had a meeting today with our product designers and they asked us like, how are we measuring DevRel? Like, how good are we compared to everyone else? And it kind of, got me thinking like, all right, like, how are we going to measure that? Like even just comparatively with just ourselves and kind of seeing the improvement, but then also like on a scale of like Web3 projects. But, there's definitely some that we look at and we're like, yeah, that's where we want to be. But I'm sorry, what was your I guess I didn't really truly understand your question. Like,
Oh, I guess what I was asking was, do you spend most of your time interacting with people who already want to use Wallet Connect and need support in integrating it, or people who you're more trying to convince to start the process of integrating? Or is it a
gotcha.
mix? That was my question.
Heard. Okay. Well, fortunately, we get it's like mostly inbound about people
Okay.
wanting to implement. They're having some questions, but that's kind
Yeah.
of like we can kind of put them in different like client segments. And that's going to be more DevRel. But I think if we kind of change it to how can we kind of get you using it, depending on who you're targeting, that would be kind of more like biz dev, so like sales
Yeah.
engineer. So it just kind of depends. Today, how I spend most of my time is working on our V2 migration. And so that's kind of, tons of outbound and then just following up with all of that and just making sure that, over communicating with the team and making sure that we're all kind of moving together, even though we're like all across the world. It's crazy.
Outbound is in like, hey guys, this is going to be happening. You need to be prepared for it. Be
Yeah,
prepared.
outbound, like,
Yeah.
yeah, like constantly seeking feedback, updating documentation,
Yeah.
just, iterating, I mean, every single day, just trying to
And
make it the best that it can be.
are you from the US?
Not
Or
originally.
not originally? Okay. Um, well then, never mind. I was going to ask on a mostly European team if you were bringing an American perspective and how that felt in that minority, but uh, I guess
Yeah.
it's neither here.
I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know. I feel like I'm pretty whitewashed. Like I've been in the States since I was 1 years old. So, I mean,
Okay.
not, I guess I'm South American. So like American in some sense, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
But
I
maybe I'm
guess
bringing my culture in.
just asking more broadly with you and what you bring to the table, not being European, how has that experience been? Like, do you think you provide something unique or do
Yeah.
you really just want to assimilate to their way of working, like 4 week summer vacation?
I mean, I think what I've brought to the team, maybe it's not an American thing, but I think so I was having this conflict with a team member. Well, it was an internal conflict that I thought was a conflict, but we had an on-site and I just, approached them and I said, hey, do you mind if we talk for a couple of minutes? And I just kind of shared my feelings of how I was feeling. And they took it very well. And, I kind of had similar conversations with a few other people where we just talked about how we're feeling. And, I think that's maybe, I don't know if European people don't do that enough, but I don't know. Sometimes like if you think there's like a blocker, it's like a relationship blocker.
Yeah,
And for me, it's really hard to get past that because generally when I'm working with people, I think I work best when I get along with people and I don't have this feeling of, are we good? Like, I feel like there's something there. And so I think what I bring is just bringing that transparency and, hey, like we can talk about this. Like, this isn't weird. I just want
yeah,
to, I'm probably misreading something. So yeah.
cool. Yeah, no, that makes sense, and that was like question salad. So I'm glad you pulled something out of it that was usable. Um, Kenny, is there anywhere you want to go more particularly with this?
Um, well, I guess I'm generally pretty curious about like um, what is Wallet Connect today, and then what is Wallet Connect going to be like in a year's time? I know you
Yeah.
mentioned like a focus on mobile. Um, because that's probably what I'm curious about. Like, what is Wallet Connect today, and what do you think it'll be a year from now, and then maybe what it'll be 5 years from now, if we can even go that far in a place that evolves as quickly and unexpectedly as Web3.
Yeah. Well, okay. So let's start with like what WalletConnect is today. So today it's this huge network that connects wallets and applications together. And that's what we do today. And what we hope to be in the next year is not just a place where you're connecting, but a place where you're also communicating with other applications. So something like messaging, like notifications, just building it so into blockchain where I'm going to quote Pedro, our founder, but he said he wants Wallet Connect to be like Bluetooth, where it's just there and like it's used everywhere, all over Web3. And it's something as, functional as that. And so I really like that comparison because, you know, sometimes we take advantage of things of like how wonderful Bluetooth is and how you use it in
Yeah.
so many different devices, but it's like this protocol that everybody adheres to and it works. It's kind of amazing. Like we don't have to, it's like this, like the iPhone Android thing, charger. Like why can't we just have a universal charger and just make
Yeah.
lives easier for people? And then you can focus on, building different features and different cool functionalities with other things. So I think that's pretty neat as far as like where we see ourselves like in the next year. But also just kind of bringing in together like chain interoperability, because they're like, are you guys familiar with Casa?
Vaguely.
Vaguely.
Okay.
Maybe refresh our memory, and certainly refresh our listeners' memory.
Yeah, okay, for sure. So CASA, they stand for the Chain Agnostic Standards Alliance, and what they do is they have these proposals called CAPES, very similar to EIPs. So there are these proposals to basically build this interoperability standard. And you have already like a lot of different networks already, submitting PRs. And so it's really fascinating to see like the network of blockchains come together and do this, because was kind of one of the things that really attracted me into blockchain Web3. It's, I feel like we live in the world, like, I guess, like the Web2 world. You have a lot of big players making choices for everybody else. And in Web3, you've like decentralized that, like anybody can be a contributor. If you want to contribute to Casa, you can go do that. Go open a PR, add your blockchain to the network. And so I think being able to see that and being kind of a driver with that as well, like WalletConnect is definitely a driver for that. It's pretty awesome. I mean, blockchain Web3 it's not just going to be one chain takes it all. It's going to be a bunch of different networks. And how are we able to make sure that these networks can communicate with each other? Because you don't want to lose that user experience, because you have all these different networks with all these different, rules and protocols. And so the fact that WalletConnect is pioneering this, this standard, I think is really cool. So I think that's to add to like where WalletConnect will be in the 1 year. I mean, that's what we're doing right now.
So what would that look like from like a functional tech stack perspective? Like I'm a developer, I've written some smart contracts, I have like a front end application, and maybe I'm on a couple of different chains. Where does WalletConnect fit into all that?
For sure. So the way WalletConnect works, you can almost think of it as like a middleware. So you're going to be using these namespaces objects, and instead of building like,
Wait, hold on. What's a namespaces object?
okay,
Sorry,
so
you're talking to
oh, you're
no
good.
code, so apologies for the dumb questions.
No, it's all good. So when you're developing and you're trying to communicate with different like addresses, your namespace is, think of it as like the name developers refer to when programming. So let me give you an example. So if you're referring to the Ethereum chain, the namespace for Ethereum is EIP 155. For Solana, it's just Solana. For Cosmos, it's just Cosmos. I think Ethereum is like the only kind of weird one with EIP 155. So that's your namespace. And every single blockchain has its own namespace. And namespace is also a term from Casa. So this is how they're referring to, like how they're actually calling these different networks. So even creating that was like was a cape on itself, was actually like defining namespaces and stuff. Pretty cool. So you have this namespace, and then that's followed by your, I'm blanking right now, but back to your question, like how does WalletConnect fit when developing these applications? So if you were trying to connect to like Cosmos or Solana, you would have to build out a way to connect to that network completely separately. So it would be different documentations, different protocols to adhere to. And I mean, that's kind of a headache for a dev if you're trying to do that for like 10 different networks. And then not only that, but then you need to make sure that the wallets are able to, get connected as well. So it's like two things you're worrying about or considering when you're building out these applications that are multi-chain. And what WalletConnect does is it has like one spec. And when I mean one spec, it's just like one format of connecting to these different networks. And that's what makes it so easy and essentially the standard that is already built into our SDKs.
So it's like your dApp, WalletConnect, then kind of all the different chains out there. So it's like, yeah, so it's like you're talking to like the Android versus iPhone charger. It's like one standard like plug input, USB-C, if you will. You plug it in, and then that will go and figure out how to talk to Avalanche, Solana, Cosmos, Ethereum, etc. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
Reminds me of what
exactly.
we're trying to do for smart contract interoperability. We do have some questions, and I want to answer them because John is nice enough to write these out very fully. John, well, he says congrats on success of Shell. Thank you, John. Um, and that he sees that we have integrated with WalletConnect. That's true. I wouldn't have wanted to have you on, and then we don't even support WalletConnect. That would have been embarrassing. So, that's not why we supported it, to be clear. Uh, let's see. Is the Shell mobile app ready? Mobile app as in something you can download on an app store? No, we don't have plans to make one of those. However, you can visit Shell in your mobile wallet, and it will be, I forget what the term is, um, resized for your vertical browser on your phone, and hopefully pretty intuitive. That was something I just Vanessa, to touch on your point. I think whenever we've done polling, it looks like a little over 30% of our users regularly use mobile to access Shell. So I don't know how that varies from dApp to dApp, but for us, yeah, that's like a big minority. And we definitely want to support that also because I think, as you were saying, while someone with a desktop is very likely to have a phone, you may well have a user with a smartphone who doesn't have a computer that they're going to be able to connect to the dApp, in the same way. So it's sometimes their only option. But sorry, John also says, how was the working relationship integrating WalletConnect for the Shell development team? I wish we had Diana here because I think she's the one that set it up. Um, I don't know. Did you talk to Diana from our dev team, Vanessa, at all before this?
Um, I don't remember.
Okay.
I'm looking at our Telegram chat, but at least in the the small context of a relationship that we've had on Telegram, I think it's been pretty good.
I think either way, it's a good sign because if we did have to talk to you guys, clearly you were there and you got it working. If we didn't have to talk to you, that means it was pretty straightforward. So the docs were doing their job, right? So I will go out on a limb and say it was a good experience. How do you see the rollout of more dApps built on Shell protocol, and how would you like to work together? Kenny, that is a question for you. How do you see this rollout of more things built with Shell tech going?
Yeah, I think, we're kind of in the late stages of building out a lot of the core features that we wanted to build out, namely time evolving Proteus that can let you launch NFTs and launch tokens and do a lot of other cool things. And I think once that's done, our goal will be to turn this into like a plug and play tool that developers can tap into without having to do a lot of the heavy lifting themselves. Um, yeah, so I think step one is getting this new automated market making algorithm shipped. We're working on that. We're getting some with Code Arena. I don't want to go. This is like kind of like a bigger conversation, so I don't want to like take up too much of Vanessa's time. We can talk about this maybe at the end of the podcast. Um, and yeah, if anyone is a developer and they're interested, definitely I think we have like a form that you can fill out, and we'd love to talk to you. Um, yeah.
Thanks. Last question from John. Currently, Shell is deployed on Arbitrum 1, and WalletConnect offers support for multiple chains. Do you see Shell rolling out on other chains? And if so, how important is a partner like WalletConnect for this? Well, what we've said for the last while is that we want to focus on getting really, really good at doing what we do on Arbitrum 1 before we expand. and there for various reasons we feel like this is the place to be as far as layer twos. So we don't have any imminent plans to go multi-chain. However, making that a little more theoretical, Vanessa, say a dApp like Shell does want to go multi-chain. How does WalletConnect help? Slash, you know, what has to happen uh, with WalletConnect in that process?
Yeah, it's super easy. All you have to do is update your namespace. So anytime the dApp is requesting permission to connect to a wallet, you send this session proposal. And in the session proposal is where you outline the namespaces. And so this is where you configure the chains that you want to connect to. So all you have to do is just go into like that one block of code and update that to what else you want to support. Include, the methods, the events of that sort, and then you're good to go.
Well, sounds easy. At
Yeah.
least on the wallet side. Um, Man, I have so
Well,
many
so
questions.
that's actually on the dApp side.
Oh,
So on the dApp side, wasn't that your
oh, I'm
question? Like
sorry. I was
having,
thinking like for me, being on a team with a dApp, that's the dApp, the side of the dApp that connects the wallet versus say
Mhm.
like the side of the dApp that is doing AMM stuff. Um,
Oh, gotcha.
that's what I get for trying to talk about code. Though,
No, it's all good.
I have another question just for my own edification. Regarding on-ramps. Um, I think about Bluetooth. One of the big things about Bluetooth is it's like very like agnostic. Like at least that's how it appears to an end user. It's not like a proprietary format like AirPlay. Um, does Wallet Connect have like an active relationship with on ramps? Are they integrated? Is there any plan for that? What is the philosophy there?
Yeah. So we are in discussion with different on ramps just to, provide a better, well, actually, let me make sure I understand correctly. On ramps as in like for user onboarding, like getting them
Yeah,
into
yeah,
wallets.
like using your TradFi bank account to buy.
Oh, gotcha. So from what I know of, I don't believe we're in talks with any type of on ramp to
Oh,
facilitate that. But I can
may have
definitely
lost you
follow
for a
up with
moment.
you on that.
Sounded like the answer was no. We cut out on I don't believe so.
Yeah, yeah, I do not believe so, but I can follow up with you on that.
Oh, no worries. Again, just my personal curiosity. I believe the Fox wallet has some integrated partner on ramp button to buy crypto with fiat when you click on it. I wonder, we get approached all the time by on ramps saying, hey,
Mm.
we want to be your official, fiat on ramp, and you'll put a button on your app and, you know. I know when we talk to Arbitrum, they very much are driven by the sense of like neutrality, in that like we don't want to be appearing to like pick favorites for certain things because we want to be just like infrastructure. Do you feel like, I don't know, where does Wallet Connect come in as far as that
Yeah, I
philosophy?
say we definitely share that sentiment. We're pretty well aware that, I think we're in a really cool spot that we're not a wallet, we're not a dApp. So we just really want to facilitate the communication between these two players. And so we really want to come at it with like a chain, like very agnostic view of what kind of providers we choose when we decide to build anything out, if we need the help. Because for that very reason, like we don't want to look like we're favoring anyone over anyone else. And
Yeah,
so, yeah, we just want to be infrastructure.
cool, cool. Um, Kenny, anything you want to throw in there?
Um, guess well, how do I put it into words? Um, okay, I think I know what I was trying to say, and I'm sorry it took me so long to come up with this question, but when token?
When token.
This is the question we
Uh,
got to ask everyone because that's the question everyone's going to want us to ask. So I apologize. We get it all the time.
yeah, no, it's all good. Unsure yet. but we're also asking when token because that'll be cool for all of us.
Yeah, scary.
Yeah.
It's for us as it approaches. It's like this kind of like a tidal wave. It's like, oh boy. Um, we're trying to just kind of like boil the frog into it on the shell side as far as like we recently gave out like intermediary like pre-token tokens so people can know like what their tokens are gonna be. And the I think it's impossible to give away tokens without a lot of people getting mad. I'm pretty sure that's just gonna happen. Which is funny because you'd think like giving things away for free would be like possibly the safest thing you can do as far as making everybody happy, but I think
I mean, I don't know. I share like an opposite sentiment. I feel like it's like printing money. You're just devaluing, the tokens if you're just giving everything out. But I feel like that's like a whole thing of like tokenomics and really understanding how to leverage that kind of technology and really execute well. Because I think maybe sometimes projects get a little eager, for whatever it is, or maybe they execute too late. So I'm no expert, but what, how are you guys gauging that? Like, what kind of resources are you doing to learn more about that?
as far as tokenomics best practices and things like that.
Yeah, to kind of
Kenny,
understand
you're
like how
really in
many
the hot
tokens.
seat.
Guess we're just trying it out and seeing what happens, Nothing like real world experiments and real world feedback to learn things quickly. And I think it's really more about trying to avoid mistakes that have already been made and making your own mistakes is that's the sort of our approach in a nutshell. I think also one way we're going about that is like Cairo said, like boiling the frog, where we're trying to do it step by step, do it incrementally instead of just like all of a sudden, no token, boom, token. Trying to like gradually ramp that up in various ways, and so hopefully that I think there's a lot of advantages to that. I think one of them, like I said, is it's a lot easier to like learn from experience. Or if you do just like one big event, it's hard, you can't really learn from experience because you only get one event, and when the event's over, you can't like adapt and change your model. And before the event, you don't really have any real world feedback, so you kind of just have to hope you get it right. And that's worked for some teams. It hasn't worked for other teams. I'm not necessarily saying one way is better or worse. Uh, the other good so doing incrementally, it lets you actually get that real world feedback as you go, so you can kind of like learn and adapt and change and refine over time. The second advantage I think is it's really important to have like a community and some kind of decentralized like governance and DAO associated, I think, with the token. I think it's one of the big reasons for a token. Um, and however that like decentralized community and governance happens, depends on the protocol, depends on what you're trying to build. But I feel like it's sort of like a like think of it like a kid or like a person. They don't grow up overnight. They don't go from being born to being an adult in like a day. It takes like time to progress. And so the other advantage of doing incrementally is by the time the token does come around, you'll have hopefully like, a grassroots community that sort of has grown with the process. And so you can have a bit more of a robust and decentralized like governance. And I think it also depends, like obviously what Shell's doing, like we're many things, but one of the things we are is a DEX, and so being a DEX is a very different, shall we say, regulatory regime versus being like middleware between apps and different like blockchain protocols. So I think decentralization for us has it's also not only is it like an end in and of itself, it's also a means to an end. Whereas WalletConnect might be operating under a different, different strategic environment. So I think it really just depends, which is a long-winded way of saying, yeah, we're just gonna figure it out as we go.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I like that you brought the point up of just trying to learn from other people's mistakes and then make your own along the way. But I mean, that's pretty hard because it's like no one's, situation is ever like yours. So I feel
Yeah.
like you either think you can outwin or just you think it's like no, it's actually the risk is too high. So I mean, even that's still it's pretty tough. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like, I think this is pretty common in Web3, to me, where the only way to have zero risk is to not do anything. And so then it just sort of becomes a matter of what's your risk tolerance, and how do you mitigate the risks, the mitigate not just the risk you're taking, but like mitigate the extreme negative consequences of like bad things happening, and make it so that even if something goes wrong, it's not like an existential crisis. It's just what's the word? Just sort of like a bump along the road that you can kind of like recover from. And yeah, and like you said, it's hard. It's not easy learning from other people's mistakes because they made them in a very different context than what you're operating in, and so yeah, I don't know. It's hard.
I'll say a little more concretely as far as tokens and the idea of giving tokens out. Um, for me, as someone who spends a lot of time like with wearing my community manager hat and like interacting with the community, but also like thinking about like protocol growth, I try to focus a lot on one, incentives as far as like what is the win condition for us as like a protocol, as a DEX, and how do we reward the people that are helping us get to that like state that we want to be in. And two, what's going to be fun, because like when people are having fun, it's sort of like this big tailwind, sort of propelling the community forward. So as far as incentives, like um, one big thing that we've tried to not do is, and succeeded in not doing, is incentivizing civil attacks, basically, or trying to farm theoretical airdrop with multiple wallets, because it's like when you say, okay, we're gonna cap like the amount of tokens to each wallet to this max or whatever, you're essentially telling people go make a bunch of wallets if you want to maximize your airdrop. We are going to give you more rewards if you create dozens and dozens of wallets and bot them, which is like one, disrespectful of their time because they have to spend human hours of productivity like botting the airdrop. And it's also disrespectful of the people that decide not to do that because they end up missing out. You're sort of like wasting hours of labor for the same net like pot, you know? So that's something that was pretty clear to us that we didn't want to do. And I think it's hard because a lot of like people who are looking for airdrops, their behavior is really trained by what's come before. They're like trying to pattern match. And I think a lot of these airdrops that have happened in the past couple of years, say including Arbitrum, like have been very progressively distributed, or they have rewarded people that essentially like wash traded or bot engaged or whatever it is. um and so you're sort of fighting an uphill battle to convince people not to do that, and we don't want people to try because even if it doesn't get them anywhere, then they're mad they wasted their time, and it's like, well, it's sorry. But yeah, it's and also like thinking past metrics that stop being reliable once you're gaming them, like engagement, volume or followers, even, Discord users, like when that's an organic signal, it's can be a reliable metric of like your success. But as soon as you start like incentivizing it with anything, it ceases to be like a meaningful reflection of the health of your community,
Yeah, it's
because
more.
Yeah.
it's one of those weird things like for example, WalletConnect, like the obvious thing to do, like if you wanted to have like a community airdrop, um, there's a lot of reasons to do it, some also reasons not to do it. But if you wanted to do one, the obvious choice would be like, okay, like integrations, projects that integrated with WalletConnect get like an airdrop. And so the weird thing is that like if no one was thinking that there was going to be an airdrop or a token, then that would work because no one would be
Yeah.
integrating just for the sake of getting a token. But typically, like these things have a way of getting out uh, before they happen, and then you'll like if you start planning that, someone's going to tell someone's going to tell someone's going to tell someone, and then you're going to be like all of a sudden like a boom, huge spike in integrations for Wallet Connect,
Hmm.
and then what do you do? And so you either have to have sort of near absolute secrecy and surprise, which is becoming increasingly difficult these days. I mean, just the fact that like you said like, oh, we're thinking about a token. I guarantee there's gonna be more integrations tomorrow, or in a few days.
Yeah. Should I just say we're gonna have a token end of week? Will that spike integrations? No.
You never know.
I mean,
Pull that clip.
yeah. No, I
Yeah,
feel like
Yeah.
in Web3 though, I mean, yes, like we've been educated that if you use a certain platform or a service, there might be an airdrop. So I don't think it's kind of such a bad way to think about things. I mean, of course, you can't do that with every single thing that you use, but I don't think it's a bad idea thinking about, oh, there could be an airdrop there, especially if you can kind of build out the reason why it would actually make sense. Like not every project needs to have a token, but some projects you might think about it like it actually makes sense if they had a token. And if you can kind of get to that rational thinking, I mean, maybe it's in your best interest to use it a little bit more if like you need to. But I think that's a different mindset of people who are like just yield like just farming for airdrops. You know, it's like a different psychology behind it. But
yeah.
Interesting.
It's like how do you get like the first category of people in that type of behavior without like over incentivizing the second type of behavior? And it's not necessarily like you have to. We're taking a pretty hard line of like we're gonna try and remove that as much as we can. You don't necessarily have to take that kind of a line, but how do you like overweight the former and underweight the latter? Is like that's sort of, yeah, it's tricky.
yeah, I don't know. I like being super clear about those things. I would want to tell people like we're going to have a token in the next 2 to 3 years. So use it now, but it's like you build so much time where some people just would feel like 2 to 3 years, that's way too long. I don't care that much. And I mean, at
Yeah.
least there you're having some people kind of stay in the network if they actually kind of care or they're like long-term investors. But I mean, it's so hard to like kind of try to measure people's psyche, especially when you have money in the mix. I mean, that changes everything.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and in a bear market, it's a lot. It's somehow it's in many ways easier to launch a token in a bear market than a bull market, just because people are a little bit more rational and a bit more patient in a bear market, whereas in a bull market, yeah, like the because yeah, when we first start out, we're like, yeah, there's gonna be a token at some point, but we're not gonna really tell you anything beyond that. Um, and then eventually, like, okay, there's gonna also gonna be an airdrop, and we're like, okay, well, this shell points thing that we built, that's going to be part of the airdrop. And now we're kind of moving, okay, now we're having seasons for shell points, and we're going to give you these non-transferable tokens at the end of every season that are proportional to how many shell points you got. And those non-transferable tokens will eventually be converted into a governance token. um, that's where we're at now, and so stay tuned to see what happens next.
Okay. Quick question. As far as the Wallet Connect token, which exists in theory, what would the ticker be?
Oh, I have no idea. And I
I
hope we
I
all
was
know that.
going
I'm also
to.
just joking too. Like, I honestly
Yeah, of
have no idea
course.
what token,
No, I know,
just for
I
the
know.
record. But if there were a hypothetical token, I don't know. I mean, WC seems pretty obvious, but like you need something more, like a few more letters.
Can you have a two-letter ticker? It doesn't need to be three. You can have two, like at least in the NASDAQ, you can have two. You can have one. I was looking for emojis when I was tweeting about this, and there's like a WC emoji, and I was about to use it, and then I was like, Wait, I think that's just like toilets in Britain. That's what that is. I don't know if that would be like offensive. Do you, do you guys
That's
have
too funny.
an emoji you like lean toward as the official Wallet Connect emoji?
Well, we have internal emojis that are the WalletConnect logos, but I don't know. I'd have to think about it. Maybe something like connecting or like arrows or something. I don't know. But
Yeah.
whatever you do, just like don't spell our name with two words. I can't tell you how cringy that feels sometimes when people are like, "Hey, Wallet Connect," and it's just like two words, and it always
Well,
makes it on Slack like,
maybe they're
but
dictating. Because I feel like if you said it to Siri, like that's what she would do. I
you're
don't know.
totally right. And I definitely do give most people that benefit of the doubt. Like they
Yeah.
probably were just typing it and they didn't realize it. But it's okay. But that's just my PSA for everyone out there. Please don't do it in two words. Just do it in one. It'll make everybody at Wallet Connect a lot happier.
Good to know. That's the alpha on relations with Wallet Connect dev relations. Well, man, we're very happy to have Wallet Connect integrated with Shell. I know our users are also very happy. Um, People just like optionality, and I think you guys have cultivated a lot of trust from DeFi users who are notoriously, difficult to earn the trust of. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's very interesting seeing people's like level of risk tolerance in and what they consider risky as like especially DeFi whales. Um, but that's part of what makes the market so interesting is that everyone has their own values and prerogatives. But yeah, no, we're very glad to have done it. We're glad to have you guys on the show. Vanessa, thank you for coming on. Is there
Yeah.
anything else that we wanted to go over, Kenny or Vanessa, before we wrap it up? Oh, you're muted, my man.
Sorry. I guess if there's any questions, Vanessa, or anything Vanessa wants to plug before she goes, or any questions she wants to ask us, yeah.
Oh,
Cool.
Kim9 says WCT for the Wallet Connect token.
That's good. I
Interesting.
like that. Let's see. I'm going to definitely plug our V2 migration. So please don't forget to be sure that you're migrated over. It's going to be happening in about 2 weeks, June 28th. And yeah, we really don't want to see any outages for anyone. So please do that sooner than later. We're here for support.
Yeah, we got to do that now. That would be really embarrassing after all this if we don't do it. So,
Yeah, we're already on Telegram. So just like hit us up, let
okay.
us know what you need, and we'll provide the docs.
I have
So
one very last question for you, which is completely theoretical. If you were all of a sudden put in a position to found a Web3 project, ignoring your current role, what would you want to do? What would you want to lead?
I mean, like theory is this answer? Like, are
This
we?
is purely theoretical. I'm not going to be giving you any VC money to do this.
No, I just mean like where we are with like certain limitations in the world in blockchain.
Oh, whatever's more interesting, I guess. Uh,
Yeah. Okay, so I just listened to this like pretty sad, depressing podcast yesterday about the women in Afghanistan and like how now there's schools being built for women so that they can continue education now that they're under the Taliban and they can no longer go to school. So I thought it would be really cool to be able to set up some sort of like a way for these women to be able to receive funds because they no longer have access to a lot of just material and like food and housing,
yeah,
shelter and things like that. And so be able to set up, yeah, like a way for them to be able to access these funds using zero knowledge so that nobody knows who these people are. So they, they're still safe and their identity isn't compromised. So I don't know, that just kind of came up to me in the last 24 hours of that would be really cool. But I would, be for me, it's like when I hear stories like that are just so, not anything I've ever experienced, I try to think of like, you're in this position where you have access to so many cool different technologies. Like, how can you actually help people that really, really need this help? And so Granted, it's only been a 24-hour thought, but I think that's what I would want to do if, this is all theory and I could just start and do whatever I wanted to do. That's what I would want to build.
Great answer. Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
Cool.
All right, guys, this is
Yeah,
fun. Thanks so much for
this was
having me
fun.
on.
Thank you for coming. I'm glad that the brunt of your day is over and you can focus on getting work done. Um, and we would love to have you back on maybe after V2 so we can hear about how everything went,
Yeah. Oh yeah, that'd be
etc.
so cool. Yeah, sharing all
Cool.
the migration stuff. All right. Well, have a great day, guys. See ya.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for
Enjoy
coming
the
on.
cold plunge, Vanessa.
Thanks.
Cool. Um, I think she's still here. Let's see. Maybe I can boost this.
Oh, did you guys want me to stay? I thought you wanted
Oh,
me to like stay on the call so it
oh
can be
yeah, you can
uploaded.
drop the call, just keep the window open. But
Oh, right.
there's a
Okay. All
little
right.
hanging
See
apple
ya.
button. Yeah. All right, see ya. Cool. Um, shell. Kim 9. Shell.
Yup,
I think we have Kim.
guys. Just getting the getting the white noise to go down. Yeah. Well, that was some that was an interesting conversation.
That was great. Honestly, it's so much easier to get substantive stuff from our peers in Web3 on these calls than it is like at a mixer. For me anyway. Maybe, I don't know, maybe Eliza has like figured out the secret of the mixer, but I feel like there's just a lot of like hors d'oeuvres and posturing for me, like when I'm in like
Heavy on the posturing.
yeah,
Never enough hors d'oeuvres.
that's true. That's true. But um despite fewer hors d'oeuvres on these calls, I think there's also much less posturing. So maybe we're onto something.
I think one of the things I like the most about these calls is is that like convincing someone to talk to you and explain to you like how they think, what they're up to, like, and just walk you through stuff. Like on a one-on-one call, that's kind of like a hard. Somehow, it's like sort of a hard pitch. I mean, maybe I just don't. I feel too self-conscious to ask, but like asking her dumb questions like, "What is WalletConnect?"
Yeah,
On a private call, I'd feel like pressure to pretend like, "Oh yeah, no, I already know all
yeah,
this stuff." Like because I read the docs because I'm not lazy, but on a podcast, it's like, well, like our audience probably doesn't know either, so I can just be kind of, I don't have to be insecure about like projecting lower IQ points.
yeah, yeah. I think man, there's always some drama. Today the talk of Twitter is just SEC versus uh, Coinbase
Hang Zhao, yeah.
and
Or Zhao
Binance.
Chang, yeah.
Yeah, man.
I don't I started kind of like a Twitter cleanse this week, so I haven't really been following it up. But
That's healthy.
and like mainstream media, of course, is pretty useless. I
Um,
don't know what's going on. It sounds like it's been a long time coming. I don't think anyone's really overly surprised by it, right? I mean, we knew that a shoe was gonna drop on Binance sooner or later.
yeah, I'm a little I don't know what the word is. I was in the middle of a like a big Binance on ramp of USDC, like when all the news broke, and I was like, bro, please no. Like I don't want to lose my like multiple thousands of dollars of USDC like in Binance. And finally today, the like 7 day like lockup for me um ran out, so I could finally transfer it to my self custody wallet. And So I went in and I did a test transfer because, that's just good practice. And I did a $10 test transfer and it went through. So I said, okay, I'm going to go do the real thing. And I went back into the app and it said, you've hit your transfer limit for the day, come back tomorrow. And I was like, bro, because it's like one every 24 hours or something like that. So for 24 more hours, I'm going to hope that Gary does not shut down Finance US until I can get my tokens out.
Well, as long as they're not running a fractional reserve bank, you're probably all right, Cairo.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll just see like how fully like SBF. I also don't want to have to wait like 2 years to get my tokens back though, Like it's weird to be in this position because what I'm most afraid of is basically like enforcement, like
It's
locking
it's
up my tokens.
it's one of those things where, like, theoretically, the SEC exists to protect investors.
Mm,
And don't get me don't misinterpret my words. I think it is, in a perfect world, we would have like government advocates protecting investors, especially like the smaller investors, in particular. But just large investors deserve protection too, because it's kind of like a rough and tumble world, and I think it's sort of like the same reason why we have like the FDA, making sure that the food we eat isn't going to poison us, and why we have like the EPA making sure that the cars we drive don't like make the air toxic. Apologies, these are all U.S. centric examples of government regulators, but I think most countries have some kind of equivalent these days, it and I think having something like that for finance and investing makes total sense. It's just really kind of confusing to me how I don't, as an investor in crypto, as someone who holds crypto and uses these services, like I don't see really any benefit. I haven't seen any benefit that I can point to that the SEC has brought to my life and brought to me as an investor. Certainly me as an entrepreneur, they've made my life worse, unequivocally. Um, but like, entrepreneurs, that's sometimes it's not about us, it's about the people. And as like just purely as an investor, it's a little frustrating. Like you said, Cairo, like, you know, now Binance, now all your money in Binance, you're like kind of worried about because they're suing Binance. And
yeah,
if they just like let things go, you'd be in better shape. And
yeah,
I at one point was using FTX. I wasn't leaving, fortunately, I wasn't leaving any money on there, but I was using it as like a fiat on and off ramp. And what was the SEC about to do like before it went bust? Allegedly was have like a very they seem to like have a very cozy relationship with Binance, not Binance, FTX before the
yeah,
collapse. And I don't know, I one there's something that happened that I wasn't didn't really pay attention to when it happened, but now looking back on it, it sort of was a weird moment. Was so when Elon Musk tweeted like, I'm taking Tesla private at 420 a share, funding secured.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, so that was kind of a weird thing. There's certain things that like, I think we got to forgive people for tweeting because, but like there's certain things that maybe you just shouldn't be tweeting. Like if you're like uh the leader of a nuclear armed country, you shouldn't be tweeting impulsively about using nukes. If you're a CEO of a company, you shouldn't be tweeting impulsively about like taking your company private. There's
yeah,
things that there have to have boundaries. So like I'm kind of in favor of that, but as part of the settlement with the SEC, they said like you can't tweet without like a lawyer present. And I don't understand like what the hell does that even why is that necessary? How is that protecting investors? If anything, on balance, Elon's especially back then, Elon's like Twitter profile was good for Tesla stock because it was like basically free marketing for them. And that just to me seems sort of like I don't know, when like uh it's I don't know. It's almost felt like like a kind of like they just wanted to like say fuck you to him, and they weren't actually trying to like. It was unclear like how it was protecting investors. It seemed more of like a power play, and I don't know. I mean, that was a different regime than what we have now. I believe. I don't think those are the same. Pretty sure there was different people than the people we have at the top of the SEC. But it was just
yeah.
like you never see the FDA say do that. You know, you never see the FDA being like, look, look, you guys gave a bunch of people like, E. coli, and now you can't tweet without a lawyer present. That just sounds like completely bonkers to me. And so sorry, this is like a weird little tirade. I just I just hope that what they're doing right now, suing Binance, I just hope that it ends up working out for the best for like the people that are using Binance and using crypto. And
Yeah.
from what I can observe, that doesn't seem to be the case. But I'm not like maybe I don't have the full story, so maybe I'm wrong.
The thing that frustrates me, I mean, I guess there are a lot of things, but it's not like crypto doesn't have a problem with malicious actors. Like everybody knows that hacks occur, billions of dollars get stolen, people create scam projects and they rug pull and I mean, and to be fair, I'd say probably a large minority, if not majority, of the funds stolen in crypto go to North Korea. So I guess I can't really blame the SEC for not having jurisdiction there. However, like, the people they're going after are not the people that are perpetrating what I would consider to be the crimes. Like if you create a meme token that has like a backdoor that lets you drain all the ETH and you take like $6 million, like if that's some guy, in like some suburb in the United States and he gets like door kicked, I don't think people would hold a lot of malice toward the US government for that. If like literally like stealing people's ETH on chain is like what gets enforced. But unfortunately, it seems like the projects that are in our eyes the most legit and are doing the most to try and play by the rules that end up drawing the enforcement, while much 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 more blatant fraud goes completely under the radar, and it's frustrating.
I think another thing that frustrates me is that I think there's like a version of like regulations and regulatory policy that actually like encourages innovation and protects like investors. Gives like a clear framework of like, hey, there's this new technology. If you do like ABC, you will be compliant, and we're going to be happy about it, and we're going to let you do what you want to do. Instead, they're just, it seems almost like anytime you ask for clarity, they say like, "Oh, well, just follow the rules." You're like, "Okay, what are the rules?" They're like, "Well, if you don't follow the rules, we'll sue you." It's like, okay, I don't know. It just makes it really, it makes it a difficult operating environment and doesn't really, I think, make it safer for investors, as far as I
Yeah.
can tell.
That's the line that Brian Armstrong and Coinbase have taken, is that it's like, please, 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 like give us clarity. We're trying so hard to follow the rules, and you just won't give us rules. And every time they say something like that, the SEC comes back with, well, we did give you rules. And then they're like, well, show us the rules. And it just sort of goes around in circles. So now they're going to court, and it's going to be not fun, but at least progress to see some of this get, you know, judicially decided. I wish it could be decided like legislatively instead of through enforcement. Uh, that would be better, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, these are U.S. problems.
It also
Um,
kind of sucks that like the SEC is going after like Coinbase way after their IPO. You know what I mean? And like saying that they were out of compliance for years before the IPO, because you essentially like let American citizens like legally become bag holders on this stock that you're now saying was never operating in compliance. You know what I mean? Uh, it becomes like American citizens, like average citizens that suffer when you do that.
Yeah, it's, if I didn't know any better, I would say the agenda and the strategy is less oriented around, you know, protecting investors, fostering innovation, and more around just stomping out any hope for crypto in the United States, and that's kind of like the end goal. Because if that is the end goal, that's kind of, I would probably be doing something very similar. So I hope I'm wrong, um, but we'll
It's
keep
also
going.
it's kind of embarrassing for SBF. Like he poured so much money into campaigning for the current administration in the US, like donating to the Biden campaign. Turns out donating people's stolen funds to the Biden campaign, which of course nobody's going to give back. And then to essentially have bought no leverage clemency or any kind of influence in the way you would expect money to buy influence. He's not on the inside from all his efforts. He's not going to be pardoned. He's
Well,
under
it's,
the bus.
I think in this type of domain, it's always about what have you done for me lately, and the fact of
Yeah,
the matter is, however much money SBF did or didn't funnel to
yeah.
different influential politicians, regulators, etc. I'm not going to say
Oh,
he
I
did
like
or
that.
didn't, but however much money that was, the fact of the matter is that was in the past. They're not going to get any more money from him, so there's zero incentive for anyone to stick up for him at this point.
It's kind of like
Um,
the opposite of Rocco's basilisk, Like if it's in the past, it can't be used as leverage
yeah,
because it's done.
now maybe if he'd been doing that for decades and he built up like a rapport and a level of
Yeah.
trust and a relationship, then maybe it would be a different story. But he really only had like what, like 18 months. So
I would also assume there is some level of like high touch, like social signaling involved in becoming a political party insider beyond just money. Like it's got to be money plus X. And I would imagine someone who's very like nouveau riche and sort of using a like a brute force approach is not going to have the touch that actually, you know,
yeah, if
wins
only we
that.
could ask Jeffrey Epstein how it's done. I'm
No, he
sure
was he
he
was
cracked the
great.
code.
Apparently, a lot more like extortion. SEC seeks temporary restraining order to freeze Binance U.S. assets. Kim, I know. Get me my tokens. I hope they wait like 24 more hours so I can get my tokens out. Sanchez asks, guys, I have this question. Will CZ meet SBF in jail? If this was like a betting market, I would bet no. I'm gonna assume you mean prison as well, semantically, for the sake of the
And by me, I assume you mean will he go to jail too? Um,
yes,
First
not
of
just
all,
like
I don't think SBF isn't in jail, and we don't know for sure that he will be. But
yeah, he may
probably
stay to
will go
house
to
arrest.
jail. What was that, Caro?
Apparently SBF is uh you might have heard this already, Kenny. He's on house arrest in his parents' house, which is on Stanford campus, like on like faculty housing, because both his parents are Stanford professors. So people like students are like going up to the house and like trying to see him and stuff because he's basically locked on Stanford campus.
Sounds like Nelson Mandela.
Exactly like Nelson Mandela. Yes.
I hope that hope that statement never gets taken out of context. Um,
Luckily, I know the person who's cutting this into clips, so I'm trying to
yeah,
catch
yeah.
him.
Well, um, yeah. Do I think CZ's gonna go to jail? Man, I don't know. I mean, I guess the point of a podcast is not to really know things, but to just have opinions and just say them. So
Yeah,
my opinion is that he probably won't go to jail. Uh,
he's
I
not
think
in
this is like I heard
the
this is like a
right?
civil suit, not a federal suit. Um, and on top of that, CZ's not going to come to the United States anytime soon. I mean, I think he already like before, long before this, refused to go to the U.S. So I don't think this. He's probably going to stick to areas and locations that don't have extradition treaties with the United States for the foreseeable future. Would be my guess. I think he's been in the game long enough to cultivate the necessary like ties and relationships to stay out of trouble physically. But what do I mean? I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know either. I just don't go to Montenegro, is my advice to you, Cece.
Wait, did CZ? Do we know? Like CZ did he steal like customer deposits on Binance US? Is
I
that a
don't
is that
know.
what he's being accused of?
There
I'm
is one of the SEC complaints is that an intermixing of customer and customer funds and profits and transfers to CZ's personal corporation, but I haven't read the complaint. I'm clearly not an expert on this, so I don't know one way or another. The TVL movement on Binance doesn't seem to suggest panic. It's been pretty much flat since the filing.
well, that you know probably is a good indicator of the level of risk. But it's like Binance US, not regular Binance. Regular
Yeah.
Binance is probably all right.
Pain.
Well, I think, the more we talk about this stuff, the more likely we're going to say something that's going to be used against us, like in the future. So why don't
Yeah.
we de-escalate the topic? And is there anything shell related we want to talk about?
Um, well, we can just give a status update. We're gonna do this vote on Reuni and Stargate today. It's gonna be fun. Do a crab vote. Let the crabs vote. We are giving Toucans some love. We've got some stuff we're playing with internally to sort of see how we can, I don't know, just trying things out. Toucans are a good like test bed for new mechanics because they're, first party. So that will be unveiled soon. And beyond that, we're just chugging along. We're in season 2. We're gonna have a crafting slash item event probably in July, and that will be like beyond the booty, but it will interact with the booty. So um, booty will not be forgotten uh, at all.
Do we have a tentative name for this new event?
No, there's like a vision board. Like I have a mood board in my head, but there's not like words. It's just like vibes. So
It's it's definitely going to be very summer vibes.
summer vibes, for sure, for sure. Um, and yeah, I mean, we're also just open to feedback. So like even people who are confused and like fudding, we still honestly consider their feedback. And if it's a good idea, we're like, oh, that's a good idea. So please don't hesitate to comment on what you want out of the protocol. Eventually, you'll be able to complain to the DAO instead of us, which will be an amazing day.
Yeah, that sounds nice. Yeah, I know a lot of people, or at least there are a lot of vocally upset people in our Discord when we released the season 1 crab claiming. Um,
I don't.
that was an interesting experience.
That was
It felt
interesting.
like it felt like we were rehashing an argument that, or not even an argument, just a discussion and rehashing points, uh, and sort of like ideas and principles that we've been pretty clear on since, I don't know, for the last several months.
Yeah, I think it was just sort of there's a certain amount of people who are not going to read and are not gonna tune in or follow the tokenomics at all. So they're sort of like only when they see it in the interface do they then go get up to speed on everything that they weren't following. And I think it was that last sort of, I don't know, like bottom tertile or whatever of readers.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I can say is that there's no real advantage of being a whale versus being small in the sense that the amount of shell points you earn per dollar LP is the same, regardless of how much you LP. So in that sense, it's very fair. I think most airdrops, honestly, even if they look progressive, probably are not nearly as progressive as they look. I think this is sort of a penalty. This is, I understand now why projects don't have this level of transparency in Sybil resistance built in because it makes them look better. And I I also like I had this like realization that maybe some of the people who are upset weren't arguing in good faith, but were. I mean, if I were an airdrop hunter, especially an airdrop hunter with a lot of bots trying to farm an airdrop, and then my bots didn't get the boost that I wanted, what I would do cynically is I would show up on their Discord, potentially create several Discord accounts, and just start like hazing and cyberbullying
Yeah,
um, the people on that project and seeing if I can kind of create a little bit of stress and panic and get them to make concessions. And then, to be fair, people have done that before and it worked, but it didn't work on us. Stuck true to our principles.
I was trying to talking to my mom. Shout out to my mom if she's listening. I don't think she is. But she lives in an apartment building, and recently she's been organizing these like Sunday brunches in the like common area for the um tenants, and like two-thirds of the tenants like come out. They have their brunch and whatever. And there's this sort of like the tail minority is this one woman who really doesn't like that people go out in the courtyard on Sunday afternoon for brunch. She doesn't like the noise, it makes her uncomfortable. And she's been, really giving my mom a hard time about it. And my mom's a very nice, considerate person and is like, what do I do? Am I doing something wrong? And I said, well, look, if this woman thought she had like a case, like as far as like the rules of the building, she would just go straight to the building manager. She would not even waste her time with you. She would just try to get you in trouble. But she knows she doesn't have a case because you're not doing anything wrong. So she's trying to exploit this differential in your respective capacities to tolerate like conflict, like emotionally negative circumstances. And if she can just outlast you on like an unpleasant disagreement, then she'll get what she wants. And I think that to some degree, if any sort of like self-serving actor is trying to like use a social angle to affect the mechanics of like a protocol, they're going to try and outlast the team as far as creating a toxic environment. And if they start to feel like they're not going to be able to do that, they move on, and you can look at the Discord the past few days and you can see people have already moved on. So I think not bending in response to emotional appeals is probably the best way to disincentivize this kind of behavior, which is not the same as not listening to feedback.
Yes. I think like a lot of times the strategy I use when people try to create like bad vibes and conflict to, get something out of you, I call it like the pillow tactic, which is if you ever punch a pillow, it's one of the most unsatisfying experiences because you just like hit it a few times and then eventually you just wear yourself out and the pillow's just there and like it doesn't punch back, it doesn't even hurt. It gives you like almost no satisfaction. And like you can only no matter how mad you are, you can only punch a pillow so many times before you're like, this I would, I'd rather go do something else. I'd rather go troll someone on the internet than punch this pillow. And yeah, I don't know. It's not always the easiest tactic to adopt, especially if someone knows how to push your buttons. But yeah,
This does not mean that we should sell Shell team member pillows. However,
like pictures of our face, pillows with pictures of our face for people to punch if they get upset.
yeah, they could. I don't know. I just don't want like to be a pillow in someone's possession. But on the internet, I think it's fine.
Maybe we can have like a Broquan pillow.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect.
He's got kind of like this punchable face, but also like a huggable face, you know.
Yeah. Web3.
Web3, man.
Always new drama, always a new narrative. It's very interesting.
People come for the yield, they stay for the content.
Well, anything else you want to get into, or should we give people their Tuesdays?
Uh, yeah, I don't know. I think I think I'm out of stuff.
Okay.
Uh, okay,
Well,
let all six of our listeners kind of, sign off and
hey, at a certain point, we will have two listeners. That'll be us, and then we can't lose anymore. That's, then we'll know that it's up only for viewership. No, and speaking realistically, Kenny, we do get a lot of views on replay. I think we have a couple hundred views on each of the videos.
oh yeah.
A lot of people just don't. They either don't like the time of day, which I understand, or they want the higher quality version, or they want the translated subtitles. So, yeah.
I know. I was just teasing us. No, I think, like I said, one of the big benefits is getting to talk to interesting people. And if you say like, "Hey, I want to ask you dumb questions about what you do," on a one-on-one call, they're like,
Yeah.
I don't know what's in it for me. Like, hey, I want to ask you dumb questions, and have like 100+ people listen. They're like, oh hell yeah, sign me up. So this is a great, selfishly, very great for me. And I think like the quality of these, the overall quality of the podcast is going up in terms of I think
It's
we're getting
going up.
better at
Yeah, if
hosting.
you, I feel like if you plotted the quality, like if you made us like assess how good each call went, there'd be an upward trend. So, we'll see. We were supposed to have another one of these a week from now with the graph. I got a Calendly notification that they may have moved it to July. So I'm currently trying to see if they need to push. So we may not actually have a Mindmeld live next week, but if we do not, then there will be one in two weeks. So either way, guys, you'll see us next time we're here.
Well, I think we have one next Friday with wait, how do you say
Oh,
this?
Milianis?
Yeah, Jason Milionis. I'm
Yes.
actually really psyched for that one. That's going to be kind of probably more of a nerdy side of the podcast, just because not that we haven't had sophisticated engineers on this podcast. Like we had one today, we've had one in the past, like with Uniswap one, but they were, sophisticated engineers being interviewed by no codes. But next Friday, not this Friday, but the following Friday, we have effectively an economist. I don't know if he calls him self-identifies as an economist, but he uh, is an expert, a budding expert in the field of tokenomics and mechanism design in Web3 and blockchains and distributed ledger technology. He wrote the loss versus rebalancing paper that he was the lead author. He co-wrote it with a team, and this is kind of like this paper has been transforming the whole automated market making space. And so I'm really excited because I get to ask him dumb questions that maybe don't seem so dumb. He won't think I'm dumb, even though I'm asking him dumb questions. For those of you that are interested in what loss versus rebalancing is, this is something you should definitely tune into. long story short, there's I think a lot of DeFi, a lot of people who are interested in DeFi and have been in DeFi for a while. They know about impermanent loss, which basically is when the price of your tokens moves, you end up losing versus just hodling the same tokens you started out with. So it's like represents your opportunity cost from price movement. Loss versus rebalancing, action, and that can be like hedged, but loss versus rebalancing is something that can't be hedged. It's like a very pernicious tax on passive liquidity providers, and basically it's the money you lose from arb traders. If you think about it, all these arb traders are, when the price on Binance moves, what these arbitrators do is they buy low on Binance and they sell high to the AMM. And that basically means the AMM is, instead of buying low and selling high, which is what you want to do, they're buying high and selling low, which ultimately costs LPs money. And if you're wondering, like, how come you don't see it, we'll just think of it this way. These arbitrators are making a lot of money, and the validators who are getting paid a lot of the gas to facilitate these arb transactions are getting a lot of money. The person they're getting them from ultimately is you, the liquidity provider. And this is something that we at Shell are working to address in the next iteration of Proteus. We're really excited about it. We'll talk more about it later, but in the meantime, we're going to talk to Jason Milionis, and it's going to be really exciting. I'm like, I can't freaking wait, because now I get to learn what loss versus rebalancing is. Because what I just described to you is kind of my high level, not that sophisticated understanding. And hopefully by the end of the call on Friday, I will actually know what it is. And hopefully you'll know sort of something about it too.
And if it's very, very well explained, I might even know what it is. And I think I'm just going to sort of be in the observer's seat for that. So looking forward to it. Well, Kim9, everybody, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your questions. Everyone watching after the fact, thank you for participating, and hopefully you took something away from this. Pleasure talking to Vanessa. And yeah, man, that's another Mind Meld live in the books. Aloha.
Aloha.